Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday and welcome to Outlawed live this evening. 52 days away. The countdown is getting smaller and smaller every week. That excites me. Ron Stone on a bit of a hiatus this evening. He is preoccupied with other plans. So, Mike Idle coming at you, and Kyle Petsch is going to be joining us tonight. He's going to wear a couple of hats. Kyle Petsch, the Chief Operating Officer of the Outlaw Truck and Tractor Pulling Association, as well as the pilot of the Thermal Thunder pulling team. Kyle, how are we doing tonight, sir?
Well, first of all, I better say I'm one of the pilots, soon to be
True.
ex-pilot.
Co-pilot.
Yeah, I've got a couple drivers that are waiting in the wings there a little bit. But yeah, so glad to join you tonight, Mike. Ron decided he needed to take a little break here before we get crazy with tractor pulling and the season, and so yeah, we're gonna have fun tonight.
Yeah, it should be a good show, and like I said, we're gonna approach you with a couple of different hats. You know, you're a pulling enthusiast, a pulling historian, but of course, you've taken on a big new job. You know, we were just talking beforehand. 52 days. You know, that's not so much, and it kind of went from, oh, you know, the snow's on the ground. We've got time to. You said you went into work on one Monday and the phone hasn't stopped ringing. Are you feeling that preseason? I don't want to say pressure, but are you feeling that excitement? You know, people are starting to get ready.
Excitement's the right word. It's not pressure, but yeah, about 2 weeks ago, all of a sudden you wake up on that Monday and it just felt different. You know, there was a little more urgency to a few things. You're getting a few more phone calls, you're getting a few more texts, you're getting emails, just working with sponsors, making sure things are getting shipped and getting things that we need. And yeah, it's coming really fast.
So let's talk about your current position.
Yeah.
You've been, you know, the COO for about 6 months now.
Yeah.
One thing I was thinking about today, you know, one question I wanted to ask: what have been some things that have come across your desk or that have entered this job that have been pleasant surprises? You know, there's going to be headaches, there's going to be challenges, but instead of looking at that, were there things that maybe you didn't anticipate that you were like, oh, that's a really neat aspect of this job, or oh, that was a fun problem to solve, or whatever? What have been some of the highlights so far?
I would say the first kind of highlight I had like that was already in November at our banquet. For those that aren't familiar or aware, I started this position on October 1st. So really after the season, right as the season ended. And, you know, so we go to the banquet and we've got the rules meeting going on. We've got the banquet. We're meeting with sponsors. We're doing stuff. And it was really moving between all three of those aspects of the organization and just being involved and knowing that the things we were talking about, the decisions we were making was for the good of all three. And really, there's a lot of things that I knew about tractor pulling, that I knew about Outlaws, that has just been proven over and over again. So, you know, by working through all of that, you were working to make things better for the pullers. You were bringing sponsorships exposure or sponsors exposure to things. Your promoters are also a very big part of it. We're meeting with them and doing things, and what can we do to better their show? So really just making all three of those major aspects really come together. Was kind of one of my first kind of, hey, I like what I'm doing here. I've told a few different people I always get the question of, well, what's the one thing that you ran into that you didn't know?
Sure.
I, as you mentioned, I've been around this my entire life. And so I've witnessed a lot of different things, been a part of it. And so there's nothing that's really surprised me. And so there's levels of just the amount of time on a few things here as we're really starting to kind of prep for the season with things. You know, I knew it took time, but now I'm in the middle of it. So just making sure you got everything ready to go. You know, I've got this nightmare that we'll show up for Ravenna and nobody's going to show up to the poll, which I know is not going to be the case. But, you know, those are the things that now start to run through my head. You know, it's not just my tractor and are we ready? Do we have all the bolts tight and everything like that? There's a lot of different aspects to it. So, you know, really coming in, knowing what was going on, there's not a big surprise.
Sure.
part is I'm still very excited about
Hmm.
what we have going on, where the Outlaws is going, just a few of the different things that we've got going on.
Maybe it's just the position that I'm in because, last year was my first full season. I dipped my, pinky toe into the water in 2023. I was at 2 events and then I ran a full season with the Outlaws this past season. So maybe I'm just riding high, living the dream. But it feels to me like there's a buzz, like there's a
Yeah.
very high energy and everyone's kind of on board with this concept of, we've got the legacy, but let's take this thing to the next level. And I feel like we see that. And I feel like, maybe that's kind of what you're talking about, that excitement of make sure all the nuts and bolts are tight on the whole association, because
Mhm.
we're poised and ready to do some big things right now. That's the mood of the room that I get, every time I'm, a part of what we're doing here. And, I think that's kind of what you're alluding to as well.
It is. The organization is in a very good spot.
Mhm.
Kurt Van Beek and the entire team behind him has this thing in a very good position. So, bringing me in is really just a continuation of that and trying to build upon and keep things rolling in a very smooth manner with it. And so there's no big things to fix or anything
Yeah,
like that. It's
that's
just
true.
it, it's
You're
just continue to build that momentum and continue to grow. And as I look at this, this sport is one of those you want to say there's no cheap aspect to it, but I want to make sure that there's places for everybody to be comfortable at their level of competition. And I think we've got a good handle on that. One of the things this year is we brought on the NSPA out of Colorado and kind of
Mhm.
merged them with our Heartland series and trying to kind of grow that at that level. But even as we get to the very top ranks of the top classes here on our national series, being comfortable with where you're at is one of my kind of focus points.
I like that. And there's good competition at all those levels. I'm going to grab a couple comments
Okay.
and then I'm going to springboard right off of what you're talking about, kind of all levels of classes. And we're going to go up to a pretty heavy hitter class with some big news that's,
Yep.
not necessarily about our association, but it is a little bit. So let's see who all's out here watching. Another great crowd tonight, folks. Let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if you have any questions for Kyle Petsch or myself about anything outlaw pulling related. Cole Lundahl, as always, says, good evening from Wakefield, Nebraska. Cole, I'm on a mission to stump you. One thing that I've been doing lately on the Facebook page is can you guess this tractor? And I've been putting up, close-up angles, and you're the first one every time. So my new mission is to try and stump you out there. Robert Miner checking in says, hello, how's it going? Checking in from Niobrara, Nebraska. Mark Willis watching from Carrollton, Missouri. We've got a points champion, a 2024 points champion down there in Carrollton. Ben Beller, got to meet him at the farm show. He says, good evening. Glad to see you're watching again tonight, Ben. Chris Pierce, he says, good evening. You like to see this? Good evening from the tractor. Planting corn in South Dakota, burning it at every possible end. We're happy to be joining you on planting season. And if every other farmer wasn't planting, they're antsy to do it now because you just threw down the gauntlet. So got to get out there in the field, folks. Marty Samuelson watching from Ravenna, Nebraska, less than 60 days away. Absolutely. Kyle, I love that we start in Ravenna
Mm-hmm.
because we've got these handful of 2-day shows, these
Yeah.
cornerstone shows. You go to Wisner, you go to Rock Valley, you go to Lufkin, Whitewright, and we start with one of our cornerstone shows. It's kind
Yes.
of like that Daytona 500 feel. We come out the gate swinging and hitting hard. One of our biggest of the year is the very first, national level pull that we have.
Yeah. To me, Ravenna, Nebraska is really my hometown pull. It's
Sure.
2 hours from our house. There's really nothing closer. And I've pulled there a long time. And my dad pulled there a long time before that and have a lot of various different tractor pulling connections from that community. So Ravenna is a very dear pull in my heart. So
Sure. Sure. That's one of those where it just means a little bit more. And it's a good track and a good
yeah,
facility. It's a fun one to start the year. Case
they've
Conover.
built that
Go
pole.
ahead, Kyle.
Nope, they've built that pole up continue to.
Case Conover is watching from Lytle, Texas. Loyal fans. Kevin Davis, another one of our cornerstone pulls out there at the Wayne County Fair. Nice to see you as well. Dale Bartle is checking in from South Dakota. Fred Petsch, he's here supporting us as always. And Tina Berger watching from Wilbur, Nebraska. Tina and Eric watching from Wilbur. So a lot of fans. That's one thing we love about this show. We've got a diehard audience who's always a part of it. So like I said, if you have any questions, be sure to comment those and we'll try to get to them. You talked about the different array of classes that we offer, and the competition level is really, really entertaining to the fans while still being comfortably within everybody's economic range, for whatever the puller wants. But if you want to talk about just the heavy horsepower class, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right here because we saw some neat news come out of Nashville, Illinois. And I'm going to hop over here and bring this announcement up. So the Pullers Championship put this up April 11th, 9 o'clock in the morning. It says class added light modified tractors. Now we need to talk about exactly what that means. And I want to read, their actual post over here. It says the Pullers Championship Committee has made a decision to make the super semi class an exhibition class and have in turn added what we are calling the light modified tractor class to differentiate from the modified tractors. The class will follow the Outlaw and Illinois Tractor Pullers Association rules at 7,400 pounds and will be promoter's choice. Kyle, this is to our Outlaw fans. All the Outlaw fans know what this means, but to the rest of the world who's maybe just tuning into the show tonight, this is our modified class, not to be confused with the light modified class, which is what NTPA calls their 6,000 pound class. Kyle, this is the class you pull in. Were you a part of this? How did this come to be? This is big news. This is exciting news as far as I'm concerned.
Well, the Pullers Championship, they're always trying to get the best competitors out there, the best classes out there, and some good competition. And, I think they were looking at their modified class and what they could do there. The idea with semis, and you're always looking at your numbers of your show. And so they come up with this idea of putting the Outlaw mod rule class in there, and had reached out because we already had, I believe, 3 competitors that was committed to even run 3 engines in the modified class. And as they were talking to them, with this idea, and they were those competitors be like, we'd love to go back to run the combination that we run all the time, that we really know that we can put on a show. And so with that being out there, it kind of come out to the rest of the competitors in the class of, hey, this is being thought about. Are you interested? Or do you have the tractor ready to go? Could it be ready to go? So several of us said, if you put that class in, would definitely be interested and would, love to be invited to do it. So that was really, to my knowledge, early last week, Monday, Tuesday, right around in that time frame, knowing that things are kind of on an accelerated pace here. And next thing I know, by the end of the week, they'll make a decision on, hey, if they're going to do this, and then, try to make some invites out there towards the end of the week as well. So as you saw, come Friday morning is the announcement. And to me, it's very exciting because we've talked about this class on this show, and I know you've talked about it on some other shows, about just the excitement and the variety that this class brings. And it's not an all Hemi show. It's not an all Chevy show. It's not all Alice. We've got all of those. We've got twin Hemis with 1471 superchargers. We've got the Chevy style wedge engines with 871s on those. We've got the twin turbines that we're running now. We've got alcohol industrial motors. We've got Rolls-Royce Griffin now with twin turbochargers on it. We've got a couple other maybe combinations that might be coming out here this year as well. We can also run twin naturally aspirated Allisons. So it's a variety class. And so that's really what the excitement is about it. And the way we go about trying to set up our rules for this class is, it used to be we'd try to stay around that 5,000 horsepower mark. In the last few years, that's kind of bumped. I'd say we're closer to the 5,800, 6,000 horsepower combination range. And with that, we've seen pretty much most every combination win. The triple combination, the twin Hemi combination, the turbines even got a win right away out of the gate last year.
Barons, yep. Cody Barons won. Actually, I thought because there was all the big hoopla about, you guys are running two and like, what's it going to be? And I thought this was the year of the turbine. I thought, watch out, you guys are going to fly away with this one, and it's going to be a big news story after that first run.
The interesting thing about that was it was just the right combination of everything. The way the track was worked, the way the tractor was weighted, the way it was geared, the way it was one of those perfect passes that right out of the gate. Yes, it starts to make you wonder. It's like, well, okay, what about this? But I think as we saw and went through the year, we were still trying to learn ours a little bit with, it was essentially an all brand new tractor with it, and struggled a little bit with that. But I think we've got a handle on it for this year. But all of that being said, most all of these combinations have potential to win. I think even the new Griffin with twin turbos on it is going to show some promise with that. So that's the exciting part about this class. You do not have an idea who's going to win. Now, Cameron Neves and Cotton Candy was very hard to beat last year. He had a combination that just worked. Ulmers and Sweet Pain have had that type of run in the past. Wayne Longnecker with River Rat has had that in the past. Donald Nelson with his combinations, and he's got added another one to the stable this year. So our class, it is a very hard-hitting class. And a lot of knowledge. You look at the number of years of the competitors in that class that go down the track, it's just amazing with it. And now we talk about TPC and the Polars Championship, and okay, it's not just Outlaw tractors that is being invited to this. We're going to use those rules, but example, Wayne Sullivan come and run a couple times with us this past year, and it's a little bit different combination. The weight's a little bit different and things like that, so it takes a little bit. But those guys have got a couple runs at that weight under us with us, and we've got some of the guys out of Illinois that can come and run. So you're going to see a mixture in this. I don't know the exact invite list of who's all actually committed to say, hey, yeah, we're going to be there. But based on some of the names and things that I was being told, I think this is going to be an excellent class to watch.
I think this has the potential to bring this back to, how does it benefit the Outlaws? How does it benefit the pulling community? I think two really interesting things could come out of us putting our, one of our flagship classes on display in Nashville, Illinois. So by getting east of the Mississippi River, which we're flirting with a little bit anyway this year on the schedule, we're going to go into Illinois a little bit, which I think is awesome. A little bit closer to my neck of the woods, quite a long ways from where you're at. But I think it puts new eyeballs that we've got a devoted fan base, in Northwest Missouri and Eastern Nebraska and along the Missouri River Valley and through that area. But maybe some of these Indiana guys or these Southern Illinois guys who don't always get a chance to see this, between this and what full pull, we're going to be able to do. Yeah. So maybe all of a sudden you get some fans who look at it and say, wow, the Hemis are really powerful that we see in the mod class, but oh, look, another triple Hemi setup. Oh, look, another quad Hemi setup, where now they're going to say, well, there's an Allison, there's a Rolls Royce, there's a DT 466 on alcohol. I think it has the potential to grab some fans that haven't had the opportunity to see this, And then maybe those fans hop across the river and, they're going to, Mercer, Missouri, or they're going to Montgomery City, or they're going to Washington, or whatever, some of our eastern pulls, and it expands fans, in our direction, but it gives pullers, like you said, Wayne Sullivan, maybe he looks at that and he says, I've always liked that 2-motor combination, but now I don't have to put the tractor down at 6,000 pounds. I can run it closer to that 7,400 where it likes to be. Hey, that was fun. I liked pulling at TPC. Maybe I'll take this up to Rock Valley. Maybe I'll take this out to Wisner. Well, heck, Ravenna, the tractor's already set up this way, and Ravenna's only 2 weeks away. Maybe I'll haul it out there. And so you have potential for it to develop both on the fans and the driver side to kind of see some, organic growth just by us hopping over there and putting our best foot forward with this class.
And we're seeing some of that with the class already. If I see everybody that I've been told it's building a tractor going to be out this year, that mod class could be one of our biggest classes. Now, again, I always say you got to see them show up, you got to get it on the track and all of that. But it's always great to hear about different vehicles coming and making it out there. So it's very exciting to be a part of the Pullers Championship with this class, with a little bit of recognition to the Outlaw rules that are being used there. And I really look forward to it. It's going to be a great show.
I like the way that show has done a nice job, in my opinion, of, and we talked about this before the show as well, kind of, don't try to sprint right away. That show has grown into its own very nicely, and it's becoming a resume pull, and it's becoming a destination pull. The pullers love it. I would almost say that the pullers, dodge and vie for it more or just as much as the fans do. They want to be in that thing, and I think we're on the 4th or 5th year of it now, and it's got to be about right on track for what they hope that pull would grow as, and it just gets a little more prestigious year and year. So fun to see them looking and saying, oh, that's a premier class. We want that here. We've always known it is a premier class. Now eyeballs that don't always get to see it. And that circle back around, we talked a little bit about full pull. Now the full pull audience, just through the live stream, they can see that as well. So that's just more eyeballs on the sport is never a bad thing.
No, it's not. And, we can touch on full pull there just a little bit and what we did with them this year. Outlaw we've been live streaming our events for a long time, showing replays on the board. And, I think we were one of the first ones to start having a big screen and do that. So that aspect of the show has been something that's been very important to us. And Full Pull Live come along this past year, done a great job. We've talked quite a bit with them, and we have now formed partnership with them to where they will be producing our events at all of our Outlaw shows as well. And to us, as we talked about, it's really a win-win for Full Pull. It's win-win for Outlaw. It's a win for their subscribers, our subscribers. Cost stays the same. But if you were a Full Pull subscriber, now you get exposure out to Outlaw. And on the flip side, if you had Outlaw TV subscription, that rolled over into Full Pull Live, and now you get all of that other content that Full Pull will be producing throughout the summer as well. So really just kind of continue to grow the sport, find new ways to allow people to enjoy it, engage with it. And we're going to keep doing some exciting things there. And, if you can't go to TPC, they will be live streaming that. So, log into that and make sure you watch it one way or another.
Yep, absolutely. Mark Ham saying good evening. Mark, can't wait to see you back out there taking premier photos. Actually, I think we might have one of his that we use later. I'm not sure if it's his or his or Chandler's. And I think that live stream has the potential to do the same thing. Full Pull was the official live streamer for the NTPA. And I always feel like there's a good professional relationship between the Outlaws and NTPA because we're kind of the West, we're like the old Big 12 and they're kind of like the old Big 10, everyone's got their regional area. Maybe some of their drivers, they log on to Full Pull, they throw up an Outlaw pull, they're watching it. and then they say, hey, that looks like a good time. What we don't have anything going on, this weekend. Outlaw's got a pull. Let's go give that a try. And I just think it just presents a fun opportunity. Good question right here.
Yes.
Dale, NSPA and Heartland, are they going to be live streamed as well?
Yes, they will. Actually, we're headed out there in a couple of weeks to do some training and make sure everything's working and running. But yes, the NSPA Heartland will be available on Full Pull Live as well.
Awesome. Absolutely perfect. So yeah, make sure that you check out Pullers Championship May 16th and 17th. The Outlaws are going to be well represented. Hoping to walk away with some hardware. You always kind of like going to Louisville. You always you root for everybody, but you kind of count what the home team's doing, and you kind of count your golds and your silvers and your bronzes. And so, that's we're bringing a lot of horsepower this year. So I'm liking our chances.
Yeah. Outlaws. The thing is, our schedule is so busy and so full that we don't have to go look for new places to go run. We've got enough going on here. So it is exciting to see our guys be able to go compete against everybody else and just show how tough the competition is with our
It's going to be a refresher for the fans too, because we kind of, we hoarded some Hall of Famers, Wayne Longnecker, he's a Hall of Famer, Donald Nelson, Cameron Neves, these are Hall of Famers in any association. And if you're a Southern Illinois puller, maybe you haven't seen Donald pull in 20 years, and this is an opportunity to see him out there on the bullwhip again. So definitely something neat. It's going to be a good time, and it's good for the Outlaws. Let's switch gears a little bit.
Okay.
Take your COO hat off.
Got it.
Put your driver helmet on. We're going to do for the first time a completely live. Now, we've been flirting with, the idea of like bringing When the Smoke Clears guests on. I don't have a When the Smoke Clears puller lined up for this week. We're in that kind of preseason sprint, really busy around here. I'm waiting on a lot of pullers to get their questionnaires back. So I'm going to hit Kyle. I've not even sent him the list.
He wouldn't give it to me.
He's going to answer this completely live. So you're going to get it fresh off the presses. So we're going to do a When the Smoke Clears interview style with the driver of the Thermal Thunder 7,400-pound modified. So we're going to get into it right here. Mark J. Ham commenting again. Can't wait to be back at the South Dakota State Fair. You want to talk on that really quickly, Kyle?
Yeah. Very excited. We get to go back to South Dakota State Fair up in Huron. Outlaws used to run a state fair sweep. It would do Missouri, Iowa, Kansas, South Dakota, even had Oklahoma in there one year. So we haven't been at South Dakota State Fair for a while. So very excited about going back up there.
Absolutely. That's one. I have not been to a pull in Texas. I've not been to a pull in South Dakota. So I'm going to have to fix that, as quickly as possible. So the pesky thing about those South Dakota pulls, there's that whole going back to school thing kind of happens around that same area. So we gotta move some dates around or something. So When the Smoke Clears puller, obviously this week it's going to be Kyle Petsch. Vehicle name is the Thermal Thunder. Class and description, we've talked about that all night long, the 7,400-pound modifieds. But I'll let you describe the vehicle because it's undergone some changes. So let's see. I'll get a picture of it up here. And why don't you just kind of maybe describe the old Thunder to us? Tell us what makes it go. Tell us what it is.
So the current day version of Thermal Thunder is a 7,400-pound modified tractor powered by two T55 Lycoming turbine engines. It's both engines off a Chinook helicopter. If you're not familiar with the Chinook, it's the big one that's got a rotor up front and rotor in back. That aircraft actually has two of these engines on it, and that's what we are running, as you can see right there. And so we built that tractor. Last year was the first year it hit the track. We actually started on it 2 years ago, and just it took a little while to get things all put together. But previous to that, it had been a single version of that. So that motor that you see there on, let's see, on the right-hand side, that's the motor that we started with in 2007, when we dedicated full-time to Outlaw. That was the motor that we ran. So
I've got
That's what it
a
is.
picture. I'll put that up as well. So you talk about, people. I've got one from 2008, so that way the
Yep.
folks can see. So there's what it would have looked like in its beginners. So that motor that's on that one right there is still, what'd you say? That's the left one?
That's the right
That's the
engine.
right one.
Yep,
Okay.
that's the
So
right engine. Yeah.
so
So
that one's still there.
So this iteration, and really Thermal Thunder came around in 2007. And that was, or no, actually it was 2004. We ran a T53. So like what they run in our light limited mod class, we ran that. So, but we stepped up full time into the Outlaw big mod class in 2007. We didn't run every event that season, but we ran about 80% of them. And so then we started running full time in 2008, where that video was, and really from 2008 to I believe about 2013, we did not miss a hook, and those were schedules of 34, 38 hooks a season in there, and so 2008 was that first year we really started figuring the tractor out. That single turbine combination it was a very stout combination for that class at that point. We went into 2009 and won a points championship with it in 2009, and then backed it up in 2010. I think 2010 was probably the best season for that particular combination and tractor. We talking about Ravenna earlier, but that year I won both nights at Ravenna with it. I won both nights at Rock Valley with it, and I won both nights at Wisner with it. So I don't know if you can do much better.
That's those are I mean, you won it at Daytona, Talladega, and Bristol. You got or at Charlotte. You won at the big ones there. So you just miss some right, and you'd have like the Grand Slam and everything. So
and actually, White Right was one that eluded me for quite a while. We finally did get a win down there. I think it was 2012, somewhere in there, with it. But we did get a win there. Iowa State Fair is the one that probably really eludes me the most. I have not won the Iowa State Fair. I think it was 2000. It was 2009, 2010, right in there. Had a great lead on the class, and that was a year that Doug Lively decided, hey, we're going to come run Iowa State Fair and run Wisner with you guys, and just put it to me at the Iowa State Fair, being an Iowa guy. And
that's the track that when I interview a lot of people and I say, which one would be the feather in your cap? And I always think they're going to say, I want to win the Rock, or I want to win the Bolt. The State Fair, the Iowa State Fair, that one means a lot to people. That's one that people chase quite a bit.
It does. We live in Nebraska, but Iowa State Fair and even Iowa tractor pullers have been a big part of what we've done in our tractor pulling career.
Absolutely.
And so, Iowa State Fair, the tractor pull there is one of the best. A lot of history to it, and like I said, it's just one of those elusive pulls that I haven't had a chance to win.
How many years? So the next one on the questionnaire, and we talked earlier, you've raised in this sport, but how many years would you say that you've been, piloting a pulling vehicle? How many years of experience have you been pulling?
I started in 92. Is when I started. So, we're 30 plus years into this, and it does not feel like 30 some years that I've been driving. And part of it, I was talking turbine tractors with another guy yesterday it's going to be bringing another turbine out. And I got to thinking back how long even, our first turbine tractor was in 97. So really in 92, I started out on a D21 that would be equivalent of what Super Farm is. At that time, Super Farm had really not started yet. It was like the next year or year or two right in there. But that's equivalent. We were running what Super Farm turned into at that time. We sold that tractor in 94. and we went 95 and 96 and actually didn't have a tractor that we owned. But I worked on a couple different tractors, Wampus Cat that Rick Barrett had at the time. Did a lot of the work wrenching on that one, so drove that quite a bit in 95 and 96. Had a chance. Randy Herbert had a diesel super stock at that time, High Plains Raider. So I was driving that at that time. I had a chance to drive Dennis Johnson's Shag Nasty D21 in the light 5,500 pound class at that time, right in that time frame. So 95, 96, even though we didn't own a tractor, I think I did just as much driving and pulling right in that time. And then 97, we built or had our first, yep, that's the Shag Nasty right there with Connors on it.
And I think I've got the High Plains Raider as well. Who drove that? Who owned that?
So Randy Herbert out of Ravenna owned that tractor.
Okay, so would this have been? We're gonna try to piece together the story. This right
yep,
here.
Yep.
So these are tractors that Kyle Petsch has driven on. Marty Samuelson's got a great question. I'm gonna let him interject because I told the fans they could ask us anything and everything tonight, and we got plenty of time left. How about that? We talked about state fairs. Nebraska State Fair, is that on the radar?
You always want to have a state fair on your radar. Nebraska State Fair is a great poll right now. We don't have that poll, but we'd love to go back and pull there. We've had a lot of great experiences there. Actually, interesting thing about Nebraska State Fair, back when it was in Lincoln, I actually got engaged at the tractor pull at the Nebraska State Fair. At the time it was in Lincoln in front of the grandstand, and I was thinking, hey, this is somewhere we're going to come back to every year, so this will be special.
Gutsier man than me. If I would have tried to propose at a tractor pull, I waited until she was already changed the last name before we went pulling.
Well, I wasn't the gutsiest one there, but so we got engaged there. I thought, hey, what spot we'll always go back to, and within about 10 years, they moved the tractor pull to Grand Island, and things changed. But Cody,
maybe you were a smart man. The more I think about this, so you found a pull that you thought would always be on the schedule.
Yep.
You got engaged there, and you can say, hey, look, every year I'll take you back to where we got engaged, and really you just guaranteed that you got to go to the pulling track every year.
Well, yeah. Well, that year she actually had to pass what I called the tractor pulling test. If she couldn't survive a year of tractor pulling, it wasn't going to work. So I took her to her first tractor pull, real tractor pull, not some, we pull a couple things out of the weeds. But what was an Outlaw tractor pull. I took her there. She jumped out of the truck. She ran into 2 or 3 people. She knew like 30 more when she went home, and been in love with it ever since. And 2 years ago, when we didn't have a tractor and we couldn't go, I think my wife was more disappointed about not being able to go than I was. So yeah. So back to the original question. I started in 92.
92. What was first hook? Where was your first pass down the track? What was it on?
Very first pass was in Centralia, Kansas, which may be a familiar place to a few people that know tractor pulling.
Temptation country.
Yes. So it was in Centralia, Kansas, on our D21 Alley Cat at the time. And the way tractor pulling goes, nothing ever works 100% correct. Dad was going to run at that time we run 2 different weights. Dad was going to run the first class, and then I was going to run the second one. Well, we had a little bit of clutch problems, and clutch was basically about gone in it. So it's one of those, pulled out on the track, shut it off, pushed it back, and we had about one more run in it. So, even that very first pass was not what you would say a normal just pull on the track back up and go pass. But yep, Centralia, Kansas was the very first place that I hooked at.
So this is fun because I'm asking you the questions live. I've only ever sent these out, and pullers will take a week and they'll respond. Is that as a puller, is that a question that I could walk up to any outlaw puller, any puller period, and at the drop of a pin, if I said, hey, where was your first pull? Is every puller always going to be able to answer that without even, second guessing?
I would think most of them would.
Hmm.
I don't know if they'll know as much detail or things like that. Um, but gosh, I would think so. And
You
it,
would think emotionally, is that
it
something that just doesn't
yeah,
leave you?
and to me, it was something that I'd looked forward to for 16 years. I'd never
Sure.
I
Yeah.
pulled guard. I started with garden
Yep.
tractors when I was about
Hmm.
8. I had a
Hmm.
stock Cub Cadet, and so it was something that it built up. So to me, that was a date and time that I was focused on with it. And I really got to think any tractor puller is going to kind of have a good memory of that first.
Sure.
It may be a bad memory too, but
Sure.
a
Sure.
memory of their
Yep.
first going down the track.
So speaking of just memories in general, okay, the very next question, most memorable hook. Like if you look back on your whole career, do you have a run that's just, and yeah, this is the one, this is where it's hard to shoot from the hip, but maybe that's what's fun about it. If I just cold call, what's your
Well,
pass?
so there,
Which one is it?
so you got several different. You remember different runs for different reasons.
Yep.
So the first run that kind of pops into my head for that one is Richland, Missouri, and I
Okay.
can't remember the exact year, but it was right around that 2010, 2011, 12 timeframe, right in there somewhere. And for those that have never been to that track, it's a very good track. The pole was put on by Jim Brackett, longtime pro stock puller with
Mm-hmm.
Outlaws,
Mm-hmm.
and it had a little bit of a downhill run to it. So if you could get some momentum, you were going to go on a run, and and it had good bite. And at that point, I knew my tractor very well, and uh, Bungarts had the sled down there that night, and Brandon was looking at it. He's like, do you think I got enough in the box? I'm like, well, we're gonna find out. Um, and I took off, and it was just one of those hooks where the front end comes up and it just hangs there, and you took off and you were locked. And at about 180, 200 feet already, I'm looking, okay, where do I land this thing? Because I have a full head of steam, the front end's up, and it is rolling.
Mm-hmm.
But that sled's also going to come on top of you, and it's going to slow
Yep.
down. But you know that this thing is on a run, and it wasn't one of those runs where you're like, Is the sled coming? Is there a problem?" You knew you were hooked. Knew you were
Mm-hmm.
good. But at the end of this track, way out, we're talking probably 450 feet. It's normally got a little runoff area. There's a creek down in the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's back when we still used the laser, with laser from that end of the track. And John Comstock, one of our
Yep.
longtime track officials, was down there running the laser. And we had our side by side kind of off to the side. And like I said, I'm trying to find a place to land this thing. And I just kind of shot right between those two and got it stopped. I knew all the room that I had, and I used everything I had and stopped it right there. And, John kind of took off running one way, and my son, he was about 5 or 6 at the time, and he just kind of hunkered down in the side by side. And, but at that time, I didn't have GPS on the tractor to let me know how fast we were going. But at that was just one of those, it hooked and it took off. Needless to say, we restarted the class and we went back, and
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wondered, was this a
yeah,
test puller, or were you up
yeah,
towards the front of the
yeah,
class, and
I,
old Donnie said, "Nah, I'm gonna stop that."
yeah, no, I was first hook, and that was the right
Mhm.
call. It needed to be done. But it, it was just one of those memorable passes. And, we've had a few runs like that. I had something similar up in Carroll, Iowa one night as well. Several people have made some monster passes in Carroll, Iowa, but we had a chance to do that up there as well. So that's the first one that popped in my head for an exciting run like that.
So there's some comments starting to come in, and people
Yeah.
have some opinions on this. Now, my next
Yeah.
question is, where is your wildest ride? But I wonder if Dale's comment is more of a wild ride. Dale says Prairie Village, weights and
Uh,
hitch in the ground. Your dad almost jumped down from the announcer stand. So
yeah.
was this a good run, or was this a wild run that Dale's talking about?
This was a wild run. This is one of those runs that you don't want to have, but occasionally they pop up. Um, Late in the season, you got to make a run. Uh, Watching the track, had to get the front end up in the air if you were going to go anywhere with it. And so I went over on a side of the track that ultimately, going back, I I got kind of up on an edge of a couple ruts that was down
Hmm.
in there. And as I took off, the front end was lighter than normal. Ultimately, I should have a couple hundred forward, but took off front end, immediately come up, kind of falls down out of those ruts. And it's never good when you're in the seat and you can just feel this tractor just kind of do one of these moves
Yeah,
on you.
start one wheeling on you.
And you're like, okay, you've got a couple decisions right here. Are you going to back out of it? But with your front end clear up in the air, you back out of it, you're going to smash it, and it's going to go down. And it's going to be bad. So generally, if you stay in it and ride it out, you're going to have better luck, or the outcome won't be as severe. We'll probably put it that way. So I stayed in it, and it made about two of those moves, and at that point, I could even feel just a little bit of slack come in the chain
Okay.
with it.
Hmm.
And when that happened, and when that slack come in, um, it hit, and it the hitch come out of the tractor, and
Oh, wow.
it did actually launch up into the air
Yep.
and
Yep.
come down. But to me, this is one of those scenarios that I'd thought about over and over and over in my head. Okay, what are you going to do to emergent shut this thing down? And so, immediately foot on our output brake, foot on both other brakes. Mark Ham got some really good pictures that he showed me at the
Hmm.
banquet later that year. I didn't even know it. I put my hands up on the roll cage and to help put pressure down. I didn't even know I did it. Got it down, and when it actually stopped, I mean, there was actually skid marks of the rear tires sliding down. But yeah, come to find out, the pin that the hitch for the drawbar was not made out of what it was. We had were
Sure.
told it
Sure. Yeah.
wasn't what we thought it was.
Sure.
With that,
Spoken as diplomatically as possible.
yeah, and
You
it
were.
wasn't the actual hitch. It was the pin in it
Mhm.
with it, and so it was just we were a little light on the front end, but yeah, there was some weights laying on the ground, and it's.
What? So would you consider that one was Dale Wright? Would that be your wildest ride?
I would say probably. I've had some that when I got done, dad or somebody like, why in the world didn't you back out of it? I'm like, in the seat, it didn't feel bad. So um, eh, there's that. I guess the very first time I did drive a turbine tractor, it was out in Gibbon, Nebraska, and I rolled it on its side. And that was actually even before roll cages with that. Um, it was right when they were changing the sleds to let you kind
Mm,
of run a little bit more, and I got cross tracked in it a little bit, and it just right at the wrong moment, and the sled come in and just kind of caught the tire, and just it rolled it over. It was slow enough that I remember my arms kind of going out a little bit, and I had to pull them back in with it. But it's yeah, you got, and that was the very first pass on that tractor, very first pass on a turbine tractor. Um, it was an exciting day with that, but we've learned a lot since
so
then.
a couple of wild rides in
Yeah.
in there as well. Now, next question, and you talked about this earlier. Total points championships. I've got you in my record books at 2. Is that official? Am I correct on that one?
Two with Outlaw. I had
Okay.
several with Nebraska Bush. Had several with Iowa tractor pullers as
Do you
well.
have an exact count? Because other pullers, when I've asked them, they'll include their whole gamut. I mean, do you off the top of your head know how many
We're
belts you have total?
probably right around 10
Sure, sure.
with it.
So
Um, I
so you've had some success in your career. Things
Yeah,
are
yeah.
rocking and rolling.
I really get to looking back at everything that I've done and been involved with already. It's very exciting to
Mhm.
me. I look back. I I come into tractor pulling at a very exciting time. 80s, being a little kid, and I don't know if it got much bigger at that point with all the what you were seeing on TV and ESPN and everything, and then just all the changes that happened in the 90s to witness all of that. I was in Toma, Wisconsin when we had a horrific accident up there that
Sure.
brought around the roll cages.
Yep.
I was there and witnessed that, and just the changes in the sleds, and elimination of the pull off, and just there's all kinds of things. The alcohol thing, the
Yep.
split between diesel and alcohol, and we were Dale Haug and I grew up together, Dale and Rodney, and just all of that time to kind of see what they've done in the alcohol world and how that all evolved and gone on to do what they do. And so there's a lot of different things that I've just seen. The one thing I thought of the other day that was interesting was going back, thinking about Doug Roberts and his evolution of what he did.
Sure.
I got to see the Barnyard Beast go from a diesel pro stock to an alcohol tractor to a fully component tractor, and everything that I'd done, as I was thinking about just different things that have happened. It's very, very fun.
The Barnyard Beast was kind of the tractor in my mind that bridged the gap between the Bad Medicine, Silver Bullet, and then the Roberts Big Toys tractors. And then of course we got to the Blackburns, and there's always been that dominant team in the Barnyard Beast. It was kind of bridging that there for a while. So the next question I have for you, I would pull out my credit card and set it on my computer right now and just bet it. I will wager I know the answer to this question, and I bet anyone watching. Kyle, who's your biggest pulling hero?
But my dad.
So there's the family farm is safe. I would not have lost that wager.
But our whole operation has been a family operation. My mom is as big of a part of this pulling team as any one of us. She used to go to everything, was involved in different organization and did entries and all of that stuff. And but even today, she is our biggest supporter. If we didn't have her around, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. So, but then I had a lot of other influences, good and bad, but Rick Barrett was another one of those, Wampus Cap fame of, trying to give me driving lessons, stand on the side of the track. And, the one thing I learned from him was you will have enough RPM when you come off the line. You will not snuff it. And there's some other guys that have come along and mentored me during that time. Reggie Simonson is another one that I learned a lot from, that pulled a lot back in that time frame, and not so much anymore here lately. But there's a lot of different guys like that that I've learned stuff from. And then it really, if you just pull in our modified class, you're going to get an education and learn a lot from some very great competitors in that class.
You picked a heck of a class to jump into, because pound for pound, any class in any of the three professional associations, our 7,400 pound mod class, there's a lot of living legends walking around still doing a lot of, major competitive damage in this class. So just walk through the pits and you'll learn a lot from these guys. Next question. We've talked about this a lot tonight. What's your day job? Well,
so we kind of did that. What I did before this, so I spent 20 years in software before I did this. Worked for a company that did document management, was a product trainer, product manager. Through that time, went to become part of another company that had about 30 different pieces of software, and did various roles from leading different product lines in there. So that's really what I did up to this point. But it's very interesting how a lot of what I was doing there translates over into my day-to-day here, because really there we were running a business, we were running software product lines. Here we're running tractor pulling organization and making sure everything is working together. So
a lot about efficiency is what that sounds like.
Yeah.
What's the best part? This is a great question. If this is the COO's favorite question, what's the best part about being an outlaw?
The best part about being an outlaw is the opportunity of just all of our great events.
Yeah,
Just the people that we have is you hear it time and time again. It is a family, and just all the people involved in the organization, in all of the different classes, all the different parts and pieces that make this thing work. Um, it's to me right now. This is not a job. This
sure.
is if I don't do my job, I've let part of my family down with that. And I don't think anybody truly wants that to happen. So the people involved, our events. I think we have some excellent events, and they continue to grow and get better. I've got another one right now that I'm talking with that guy's very excited, and could be a great opportunity for us as well. So to just be able to bring that excitement out there. Fans, we have got excellent fans, and this show right here just proves it. The amount of response, the questions we get, the interactions. You look at social media and everything, as far as the questions and the interactions that we get. So there's a lot of different moving parts to what makes this organization great. It's not just one specific thing. It's all of it.
The fans, I'm glad you talked about that. So I spent a lot of time traveling just as a fan before I got involved in pulling production, broadcasting, anything. And I would go to PPL pulls, I'd go to Outlaw pulls, I'd go to NTPA pulls. And what I saw this year with the Outlaws was a fan group that is passionate about pulling, that shows up in big numbers regularly. It's really neat that you can have Eastern Nebraska, and we've got 4 or 5, 6 pulls within a 100-mile radius of each
Yeah.
other, and they'll still pack the stands in all of those. Our fans, I think, are not only do we have some of the best iron in the world, we've got some of the best fans out there too. And right on that, that's our final question. What would your message to the fans be?
Uh, Keep coming.
Yep. Yep.
You're going to be entertained. Um, I feel this is one of the best family motorsports that are out there. Walk the pits. You hear it time and time again, but there's meaning to that. Walk the pits. Talk with the pullers. We've made some lifelong friendships just by the people that come up and said, What is this thing? Explain to me how this turbine thing works." Um, don't be afraid to talk to the pullers. Don't be afraid to ask questions. We all thoroughly enjoy what we're doing. We take great pride in our machines with it, and this is me talking as a competitor right now. And
No, go
there,
ahead, Kyle.
yeah. So that's one thing that fans can do, and I know we try to get more and more access to those areas. I think outlaw shows are very good at allowing spectators into the pits. And from an outlaw perspective, come come visit, come see the show, come be a part of the show. If Let us know what you like, what you want to see different, what you want to see new. If you've got an idea of something, hey, we think this would be make this show better. I want to hear it.
Mhm.
Part of I would say if there's any downside a little bit to my involvement for so long in this. I've been around a lot of it, so there's some of these things that you just take for granted,
Sure.
um,
Mhm.
and you don't, you never want to do that. But if you've just been around it forever, just even the smell and the sound. When I talk to people that are brand new to a pull, and you fire up 3 Chevrolet engines, they can't believe the amount of noise and things like that. So, yeah, just come to a poll, support all of our events. We have got great events, and we're looking forward to this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you're giving me the fever, man. I'm getting
I know.
goosebumps. I'm ready to get back out there. No, when you're talking about, hearing the power and the smells, the dirt and the diesel fuel and the methanol, which just has its own, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Your competitor and pulling legend Donald Nelson wants to know, are you having a bullwhip drink? He saw you with your tumbler there. Now I don't know.
I,
Is there some code in the modified class? I've not had a bullwhip drink. I don't know what that is, but are you
I
having
might
a
have
bullwhip drink?
I might have the beginnings of half of the contents of a bullwhip drink. It's not a full-on bullwhip drink.
It's it's not whipped yet,
Yes, that's
So
probably the best way to say that.
got a couple other comments in here. Delton Rissler says, "You guys rock." Delton, we hope that you're getting ready to roll for the season.
Yes.
You rock as well. Be sure to check out Diesel Power Plus for all of your Outlaw merchandise, toys, accessories, ball caps. I mean, Delton.
Another big part and component of the Outlaws. Delton has done great with everything that he's done with us.
And he points out 90% of tractor pulling supports local organizations, FFA, firefighters, EMT. Yeah, they're community driven, and we are just we're the band, we're the entertainment. But it goes back to what all these small associations, these picturesque fairs that we go to. Kurt Van Beek chiming in says, "See you all next week as we get everything ready for this season." I need it. My students are checked out. We are at that point in the year where it is a grind in teaching. We're not going pulling next week, but I'm so excited to be going to Rock Valley just to be seeing my pulling family, my pulling friends, and doing something pulling related. So, we're all excited to working. We're going to be working, but I'm excited to go to work next week.
We're going to make sure we've got everything loaded and all the trailers and stuff ready to go, and all the production equipment is fired up and ready to go. And it's really kind of our kickoff.
We're getting there. Hey, we've done a lot of talking. Well, let's do a little pulling. I know we're running just a little bit late, but we've got some videos, and I pulled up some of your good runs from this year. Take a look at it. You can tell us what you think. You can walk us through it. And then I pulled up a vintage run I want us to look at as well. And then I do have something, folks. We're going to do a who wore it better. So if you're still watching, be ready. We're going to have a vote at the end of this. Kyle mentioned earlier that his days in the seat might be limited. So we're going to do a little compare and contrast. But before we do that, let's check out your run. How do you feel about Warrensburg, Missouri? Does that one sound like one you want to show the folks at home?
Yep. That would be a good run from this past year.
That would be one. We don't want to do Rock Valley.
Well, the run wasn't bad at Rock Valley. It was trying to get it off the track. What's the problem?
Well, all right. This is in Warrensburg at the Show Me Shootout. Let's take a look at this one right here.
One of those motors came out of Miss Budweiser, unlimited hydroplane racer. One of those motors actually spent some time on the water. Kyle Petsch comes out of Milford, Nebraska, calls it Thermal Thunder. Hopefully they've removed those ready for takeoff.
So here, we're actually starting the second engine right here. It is what.
When you come on the track, you're coming under the power one, right?
Yep. So
what are you watching on your screen right now?
I'm watching the RPM and the temp of that second engine. So now we're starting to bring both of them up to speed and doing a little work on it. They're a little slow to come up to RPM. So it just you can give it too much fuel. So you just got to be very slow and deliberate about it.
So patience and a feel is key. Yeah. So here's our launch. Did we tap the right brake at the very tail end of it?
Yeah, just right at the end. We did. And that's probably one of our best runs from last year. We were trying to figure out some rear end ratios and different things, and then we had a little bit of rear end problems. So then we had to kind of totally change what we were doing with some ratios, and balance become a couple things. So through the year, we struggled a little bit with it, but that right there was, I think we finished second or third that night.
Second place. Yep, that's a second place finish.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we were starting to kind of get it figured out, and then I think right after that weekend, then we ended up having some rear end problems, and we just kind of fought it for the rest of the season at that point.
Let's go way back into the archives, and you can kind of go down memory lane. It's kind of fun, I think, to look back and reminisce on what once was. Let's go to the Iowa State Fair in 2008. This is from Iowa Public Television, the PBS of Iowa, broadcasting this right here. They do a nice job. I mean, this is
they did. They did it for years, and
Mm-hmm.
you always look forward to going back and watching it the next week or so, because at that point there wasn't live streaming.
Mm-hmm. So let's check this one out. Different paint scheme and everything. So this is a year after it's built. You get a little wild on this one. This is a fun run. Let's take a look at it.
Yeah, I'll have to watch this one.
Kyle Petsch.
I remember it, but I don't.
A T55 Lycoming engine of this sort of thermal thunder is the name of the tractor. And the wheels spin, and there he goes off to the races. These big jet helicopter motors can make a big difference for these drivers. 292.65. These wheels down.
So the thing about
like a sprint car, you were like drifting that out of turn number 4 right there, bringing it back around.
Yeah. So for those that are not familiar with the old Iowa State Fair track, it was an old dirt race car track. And if you've been around them, they turned very hard. They did their best to get water in it and do what they could, but you just knew that that's what that track was. And that was one of the advantages of running a turbine like that, is that we had all kinds of movable weight. So we could go ahead and hold on here. So we could go ahead and we could move all kinds of movable weight. We could get it to the back, and that's what we did there. I was able to get the front end up, and we actually got some momentum, but that track, it wanted to kind of pull you a little bit to the left, and I did get the tractor pointed back up the track there, but the sled kept wanting to kind of go down to the bottom side of the track there. In that video, it doesn't show.
Rounds, you're on the straightaway, but it is kind of banked.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of a
on
bank.
The apron, so to speak.
No, we weren't. And if you pulled on those tracks before, some of those tracks will even have a tendency to pull you uphill. And you wouldn't think that would be the case, but once in a while you get hooked in a groove, and that would happen. But yeah, that was really the first full season with Outlaw running that turbine there at the Iowa State Fair.
It had speed. I mean, you were cooking. You were cooking. That's a fun
at that time, that combination, it was a very tough combination in that modified class. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Couple of pictures I want to show. There's not a tons of jobs you can have out there where you can give your boss a hard time from time to time, but I do want to show this one up. How often as COO or as puller do you find yourself with this look on your face?
Right now it's been more as a puller. Unfortunately, we exited the track twice like that last year.
I'm less concerned with the tractor, and just your body language says it all here.
Yeah, it's you start to kind of get frustrated a little bit, and at that point I have all kinds of things running through my head of, okay, why does that wheel and rear end not want to turn?
Was Facebook Marketplace looking like a really good friend right about this moment?
Well, we had some friends that come through for us, and we got parts the next week with that. But, to prevent that, we went ahead and just bought our own tow strap that we can wrap around the roll cage. So now we'll never need to use it anymore.
So what I'm taking is you're not the golfer who sells his clubs after a bad round. Then you just take it on the, say that's part of it. But, folks, every puller, I don't care if you're Dave Banner or, a 5-year-old on a garden tractor, this is pulling.
It is.
Everybody's been there.
It is part of it. No matter how hard you try to put the best of everything in it, all the maintenance, everything. There will come a time that you are going to have some kind of event like that.
The idea is to push the machine to its limit, and you can't do that unless you find the limit. All right, final thing, folks. I want us to vote. Kyle's talked about how, Kaysen has done some pulling that maybe we're going to start phasing things out. But I did find these when perusing Facebook, and just apples don't fall far from trees. So who wore it better? We've got a couple of pictures out here. Exhibit A, a young Kyle Petsch mounted atop the horsepower beast, laser focused, ready to go. And then I'll be darned if we don't have almost the exact same look right here. Kyle, does that just kind of make you proud when you look at a picture like this?
It does. He has done an excellent job coming along. You always wonder, you tell him all types of things, and you run him through everything. And Kaysen's one of those. He wanted video of everything. I think all of our cockpit video and everything. I don't know how many hours he's spent watching all of that, but he's done a very good job at it. But the one you don't have in there, I've got a daughter that's just itching to get in the seat. So we've got to get her in the seat.
She's right in the middle of right in the heart of track season, right?
She is. Yes.
Right. So have you had that conversation with her about, okay, here's where you're going to make your debut going down the track?
Yeah. So we're going to try getting her in a smaller turbine here to start with, and get her feet wet a little bit. Will we see her in the 25 season? Yes. Yes.
Oh, okay.
We will see her in the 25 season.
There's three things that you've alluded to. Two of them I let you sneak by, but you talked about there's a pull in the works, and I didn't make you answer which one that's going to be, but fans, he did sneak that in there. And did you also notice that he snuck in something, so-and-so's building a turbine? And I don't remember his exact words, but he also snuck that in there. So three big things that Kyle Petsch has alluded to. The only cat out of the bag is that we are going to see the newest edition of the Thermal Thunder pulling team making her debut this season.
Yeah. So pretty excited.
Absolutely. Kyle, I appreciate you coming on the show tonight. We wish Ron the best of luck in his travels and endeavors, and he'll be back on here again next week. And as always, folks, if you're interested in When the Smoke Clears, please reach out to me. If you have those questionnaires, please get them back to me. We do have Kurt Ulmer's questionnaire. We did not have the time to prepare the adequate highlight video. So we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that he gets his video. What we didn't want to do, fans, this would be our third time in 6 weeks featuring Sweet Pain, and we didn't want to roll the same video out. We wanted to make sure that Ty, Kurt, and Craig each had their own highlights. So we were really going through and finding each driver driving. So we want to make sure that they all get their own credit. We wanted that video to look good. Fingers crossed, we'll have him ready to highlight next week. And 15 minutes past when we're supposed to do things. Kyle, you and I are not known for telling short stories. So, we could have known that was going to be the case. Any closing messages to the folks watching out there?
Well, come to an Outlaw event. We've got a lot of great events happening this year. Come talk to us, walk the pits, talk to the pullers, spend some time with us, and introduce yourselves. And we're just ready to get this pulling season started.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Ladies and gentlemen, have an awesome Tuesday night. We'll be back 1 week from now, and we'll be down into the 40s in our countdown. We're 52 days away from pulling green flags and tight chains. Pulling is fun, folks. Thanks for watching.
Time Petsch champion just a few years back, Craig Ulmer and Sweet Pain. Missouri Buffalo's Chip.